Welcome everyone to Melfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Constellation Season 1 Episode 2. It's called Live and Let Die. So spoilers for the episode as always. Yeah, I wanted to check out more of Constellation. First episode left me feeling a little bit mixed, and I still feel kinda mixed at the end of episode 2. There was more things in this one that I liked, but there was also a continuation of some of the things that I felt a bit unsure about, and I still kind of feel that way. And it feels like they've not done anything to alleviate those feelings. To start with the positive, though, I really thought the re-entry sequence in this episode was very good. And that's it's a big chunk of the episode. Actually, there's a lot of build up to it. The first half of the episode's a lot of her trying to transfer all the batteries in time and that kind of thing. And there's a sort of good kind of we think we've lost her kind of moment on the ground. When the time limit runs out, when it's she has to launch by this time, her air supply is going, and they can't contact her. They lost contact towards the end of the last episode, so she has to do the re-entry calculations on her own. So it's very precarious in general, but it doesn't seem like anything's happened by the time limit running out, and it really does feel like everyone on ground is kind of given up and is depressed and is basically calling her dead. But then, of course, the locks on the Suya, I think they were calling it, finally work, or release rather, and she's able to start re-entry. But the entire sequence of her coming down, sort of hitting the orbit or the atmosphere, and there's a great shot when she's sort of coming down, and we're sort of looking down at the sort of the parachute that's it's launched, but it's not quite filled out yet. So you see it kind of fill out, and then ultimately crashing on the ground, which looks quite nasty. That couldn't have been a pleasant bump when the pod landed on Earth. I thought all of this was really well shot from a technical perspective. I thought it was kind of exciting. It was exhilarating. It's probably the best outright just standalone sequence out of the 2 episodes so far. So I want to compliment that. I want to see the good things where I can, but I will say this episode kind of doubled down on the idea that we're going to be doing more kind of I don't want to just call it dreamlike, but it feels like I don't have a better phrase for it, but the idea that some of the other reality or whatever's going on here, if it isn't another reality, but the world's been split in 2, so there's kind of these 2 versions that are kind of mixing. They really hyped up again this idea of the psychological side of this, particularly there's a scene early on in the episode where she sees a floating hand, right? And it's the floating hand effectively of the dead guy, because I don't think I mentioned this in the last review, but when they were trying to save him, they had to amputate his arm, or at least they were going to. I don't know if they actually went through with it now that I'm thinking about it, but they mentioned that they were maybe going to have to do that. And we see this arm floating there, and when she goes to sort of touch it, she sort of shakes the hand almost. It sort of, it grips her. And then all of a sudden, the full guy is there kind of staring at her, and it's like he's alive again for a moment. And, obviously if this was any other show or movie, I might suggest that she's just having some kind of episode because she's up there on her own, she's stressed out, maybe she's seeing things. That would be a certainly fine thing to do. But because we're dealing with this idea of getting glimpses of alternate realities, and because of the way she's seeing 2 the versions of her daughter and the present day stuff that bookends the episode again, much like it did episode 1, it probably feels fair to say that this is probably more some kind of glimpse of an alternate reality or something like that. This is the sort of thing that this might become more clear as the season goes on, and it won't always feel quite as just randomly dreamlike as it feels like to me right now. It's kind of hard to feel there's a definite rule here as to how this stuff is appearing. Right now it feels relatively random, and while I can't say that it is random, because it's entirely possible that everything she's seen will make some sense later. We'll understand the context for the cosmonaut last episode and how that kind of bled into our world when the Calth experiment turned on, and maybe it'll explain this version. Or when she's leaving the ship, she looks back and it looks like she sees someone still in the space station, I thought it might be herself, actually, because it looked like a woman at the sort of the port. And it's an open port where that's just left, so obviously no one could actually survive that, but maybe she's just seen a glimpse of someone in another world where there's still a pod attached to it or something. But I'm not finding these moments as exciting in terms of like, oh, we're building a mystery here, and I don't really know why. It might just be that it does feel a little bit too much like a dream sequence, effectively, in like another movie, like a Nightmare on Elm Street or something like that, where you'll turn around and something will just be gone. And I think that's why, particularly the bookended sequences of this episode left me feeling quite cold. Because at the end of the last episode, of course, she found her daughter, her real daughter, the one that speaks the same language, in this closet in this other place. This episode starts with her bringing her back to her cabin, and she warms up a bath to try and heat her up because she's freezing, and she's taking care of her. And I did like the moment a lot, actually, where she goes into another room to get something, and she hears some tossing and turning, and she turns and notices that the version of her daughter that she came to this cabin with in episode 1 is still in the bed. She's still there. And then she looks over at the bathroom and can see her real daughter in the reflection in the mirror. She's still in the bathtub. So I really enjoyed that moment, and I thought, oh, maybe we'll play with something interesting here where there's two daughters eventually, because she's got one from both universes or something. And when she goes into the bathroom to see that the other one's still there, she's just vanished, right? And I don't even think there's water in the bathtub. Like, she's just gone. And the daughter that's here originally is up at this point and is asking, what's wrong, Mum? She basically thinks her mother's going crazy because she keeps saying, where are you, Alice? And she's like, I'm right here. And she's like, not you, the other one. Did you not see the other one? And they do some things here where, like, she specifically points out that her daughter, like, she can smell her daughter. That sounds weird to just say it like that, but she smells her head and says, oh, you smell like you, implying that the version that she's not actually supposed to be with smells a little bit different. And they kind of pay that off later in the episode when she lands and she hugs her daughter. And I was expecting her to be in the wrong universe or in an alternate Earth when she landed, but there is like a couple of minutes when she lands and she hugs her daughter, and it seems like she came back to the right Earth. And there's a specific moment in the helicopter where it seems like the split happens. Obviously, she's been kind of, intermingling with this other reality, if you want to call it that. But this is where the actual split, and this is where you are now, seems to happen, is on the helicopter towards the end of the episode. But anyway, the point I was getting at is that I think I felt a little bit just kind of deflated when she went into the bathroom and the real daughter was missing. Because it kind of felt like, okay, we did that a couple times in the first episode where she'd be like, suddenly be somewhere and then she'd snap back to reality, or something creepy or weird would just happen. And I don't think I like how they can, how they just, it seems like this is going to be a running motif in the show. Right? It seems like it's going to be a running thing they keep doing to disorientate her and the audience. And I don't think I really... Like, I want mysterious things to happen, but I want to kind of like, be able to theorize on it a little bit. I want to sort of try and piece it together, and I want hard rules to kind of exist for it, even if they've not explained to me what the hard rules are yet. And I think the feeling I get when I'm watching sequences like this that do just feel more dreamlike, even though I know because of the premise of the show that there's something more to it than that, it's not just randomness, it does... I think feel a little bit frustrating to actually watch those sequences and just be like, oh, it's nothing, she's disappeared. Now you have to deal with the fact that she's not there. So the end of this episode, which is basically just her telling her other daughter to bundle up, we have to go and look for Alice, not you, the other one. And the episode ends with her just wandering out into the snow looking for her real daughter. I found that feeling, I left that feeling like, oh, we're ending this episode with her going out into the snow, and I feel like I already saw her do that a couple times already. So these bookended sequences, just in episode 2, I was already feeling kind of over. I'm like, okay, this doesn't feel like I'm not that interested in what's going on by the end of it. So that's I think a big critique, is that I think what's meant to be the main hook at the end is something that actively kind of made me groan, as opposed to being like, hey, I'm into this and I'm fascinated about her finding her daughter. Like, she just magically disappeared again, because it makes me feel like even if she does find her again in episode 3 or 4 or whatever, she's just going to magically disappear again until you figure out why she's disappearing, or why you're sort of like dipping in and out of two realities, or whatever's going on here. So yeah, well, it wasn't super into that. There was an interesting bit of body language when she lands, though. Her husband, because I know we heard in episode 1, the daughter said, "I know you and mum are having problems," but the way he said, "Hey, are you okay? Are you all right?" It's almost like he was making small talk, and he just bumped into her on the street, rather than you just survived a almost death experience. And that felt kind of weird to me. And it was actually, it had me doubting if like she'd already swapped to a different reality. I was thinking that maybe in the alternate reality they'd already divorced or something like that, and that's why he was talking even more detached than I was expecting. And it kind of felt like the other guy that she works with, the one with the sunglasses, the way he came up and expected to have like a reunion with her, and then she just kind of cut it short, made me think that in the alternate reality, he's maybe got something with her, and he's surprised that she's not like happy to see him. But I kind of threw that out the window when we got to the helicopter, and it made it kind of clear that she was with her real daughter. And then, interestingly, there's a moment here where her daughter also kind of sees everything change. Like, her real daughter, all of a sudden, it looks like she's just on her own in this helicopter, and there's no one around her in the desert. That's interesting. It does maybe set up for those bookended parts of the episode that the real daughter is in some way just missing in like some sort of interdimensional cul-de-sac of some kind. Like, she's on like a different plane of existence, and like the show is really about Joe trying to get her daughter back. It's interesting. I guess we'll have to see in episode 3, right? Which I think I'll watch. I think I want to see where it goes, but at least for now. But I think we'll have to see, like, are other things different, or is it all just revolving around the daughter? Because as of right now, nothing has been here to indicate that there's differences really, other than maybe like, you know, seeing certain people alive for a brief second. Maybe that indicates they're alive in the alternate world. Nothing has really indicated that anything is fundamentally different so far, other than the daughter herself. I wonder, though, there was some pieces of information in this episode that I did wonder if they were seeding for possible episodes later where, for example, Henry, Jonathan Banks' character, at one point says, "Oh, I've not seen my brother in years, thank God." I was wondering if that was a line setting up something that we can see as different later. Like, maybe he will be good friends with his brother in like a future episode, and that was a tease, that was like a setup for that, so that we know something else has changed. But right now I'm actually debating if anything other than the daughter is going to have changed, and maybe it's less about her going back to an alternate reality, and perhaps more that because she was close to this Cal experiment and it's kind of bonded to her, it's something to do with like her mind, like in this new matter, making a different version of her daughter, and it is kind of on her to kind of make sure her real daughter gets back or something. And it's less about going to literally an alternate Earth. Although Jonathan Banks, Henry, he did seem quite pleased at the end that the particle or whatever they did that had split in this device. He seemed quite happy that had been retained, and now he's got his hands on it. So presumably we'll see some interesting stuff with him going forward. So yeah, as far as our stuff goes, you know, it's a 55-minute episode or whatever, and I don't feel like I have that much stuff that I really want to talk about. It goes through a lot of the beats you expect it to go through, with her, you know, figuring out which buttons to press because it's all in a different language, and moments of tension because the locks won't release, and they just kind of magically release after a bit. There's not really much to it. Although, the way the camera focused on this console inside the station that was flashing red, it did make me think that maybe it her or someone else from assuming we're still doing an alternate Earth, right? And we're doing like an alternate dimension where all these other people are there and things are happening differently. I almost took the way it focused on this empty part of the space station with this red flashing light that seemed to be tied to these locks releasing, and then they magically release. And then when she sees someone in the station who's not really supposed to be there as she's leaving, it made me think if someone, maybe herself from the other universe, pressed this button for her inside the station. It really made me think if that's what we were doing there, which is interesting if that's the case. Like, I actually think that's quite cool if that's what we're doing there. So that's worth mentioning. Yeah. So no, there was some focus on like bringing back down the dead body and the daughter Alice seeing the dead body and being told to look away, and there were some conversations between Henry and let's see if I can get the name here. Was it Lysenko? Is the woman who was running this European Space Agency, at least the mission at the ground control? They were having a conversation about how this is all wrapping up, that the space station's time is kind of done, it's kind of 10 years overdue anyway, and he's very upset that they're giving up on it. It's interesting, actually, because I remember reading just recently, like in the last couple months, that they're going to gradually dismantle the space station now, because if they don't, eventually it'll all just come through orbit and like crash into Earth, because it's gradually decaying in orbit, which it's supposed to do, I think. It's just normal, but the idea is to control how much of it's coming apart bit by bit so that it's not just a big, huge... Like, actually control where parts are going to hit, so it's not just going to randomly one day crash down in the middle of a city somewhere, you know? So, yeah, we're kind of at that stage where the ISS is being decommissioned. It's interesting. I wonder if they had an inkling that was happening when they were writing this or when they were making the show, or if it's just a weird coincidence that we're kind of dealing with that now. But either way, interesting tidbit. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the episode. I'll check out episode 3. I feel like I should, because I think that 1 and 2 kind of feel like one big two-parter now that I've watched both. It feels like this was the story of the space station and like why something went wrong and how difficult it was to get back down. I think next episode potentially could be a lot more interesting with her noticing changes, if there is other changes other than her daughter, but it feels like there'll be a lot more for her to notice and discover. I just wonder if my general feeling about the more dreamlike aspects of her seeing things that might just be from another world or an alternate timeline, I wonder if that's something that I'm going to get over because it's going to feel a bit more concrete and make sense as time goes on, or if that's just a stylistic choice of how they're showing some of this stuff that I'm just never going to appreciate and like. I really don't know at this point. But that's episode 2 of Constellation. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Helps out a bunch. And of course, you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get some bonuses for your trouble. But that is me, so thank you. I'll see you guys next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?